Welcome to Optimize Your Impact Strategic Approaches to K-12 Fundraising, Communications, and Community Building, the Center City Capital Campaign case study. We will definitely make sure you get this presentation afterwards and feel free to add questions as they come up. Today's conversation will be a look into Center City's $1 million capital campaign. We'll talk about what worked, what we'd repeat, and how you can apply it. We'll start with some introductions and the welcome and introductions, and then we'll turn it over to talk about the case study and the story and the why. And then we'll go into the details of how the capital campaign journey, the strategies, assets, and activities. And then we will open it up for Q&A. So please feel free to add those questions as we go along. And we have Center City Schools here. We'll introduce introductions, frontwood strategies, and funded strategies. That's a mouthful. Today we have our presenters are Russ Williams, who will join us. He had an unexpected conflict and will join us for the Q&A, but he will join us later in the session. We have Patrice Jones. I'll turn it over to you, Patrice, to do a quick introduction.
Sure. Thanks, Valerie. Hi, everyone. My name is Patrice Jones, and I am the Director of Makerspace Operations here at the Makerspace at Center City Public Charter Schools. And my role here is super awesome and amazing, but I really get to be centered on just bringing the makerspace vision to life from a programming and student experience perspective. I've had the opportunity to help shape what hands-on STEAM learning looks like inside the space and how students engage with it every day. And throughout today's session, I'll share some examples of how the space functions in practice, how partnerships supported the work, and what we've seen so far in terms of student outcomes and engagement.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrice. I'll turn it over to Nell Callahan from Frontwood Strategies.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nell. It's so nice to meet you all and to get to talk about this amazing project with Patrice and Valerie. I lead a small but mighty communications firm based here in the DC area, but we work with organizations all over the country to help them tell their stories. And so I'm super excited to share about how we worked alongside our partners here to tell the story of the makerspace and really bring the Center City vision to life.
And I'll do a quick introduction. I'm Valerie Hunsinger, the Senior Director of Talent and Learning at Funded Strategies. We are the national leader in charter school fundraising and support schools and education nonprofits across the country. We currently have worked with 90 charter school and education nonprofits, worked in 22 states. And we have set an ambitious goal, a North Star, to raise $1 billion for public education by 2030. And so we are, thinking about the many ways that we can highlight those success stories to help other schools and education nonprofits apply best practices. And Center City has been one of those incredible projects, as you will see today. We will get started with the case study. So this is our first webinar on featuring a case study, and we wanted to share how Center City turned a warehouse to a makerspace. It is crazy to think that is what the building used to look like. If you walk into the space, we visited it last week. It's one of the most incredible education spaces. And if you have a chance to visit, I highly recommend it. And we have contact information at the end so you can see the space in action. And Russ wasn't able to share right now, but he, shared ahead of time is like the vision for the makerspace started several years ago. He recognized that there was a need to strengthen science and hands-on learning opportunities for students. And they explored a few options. I think we're exploring different busing opportunities to take students to learning opportunities. They explored adapting existing classrooms, but really realized that the age of the buildings and the fact that they didn't own the facilities, that it was not a practical approach. And so there was that frustration around seeing students having to travel outside of DC to access spaces like the Makerspace. and really believing that students deserve the kind of opportunity at home near their schools in DC. So the makerspace, a standalone makerspace, became the most effective and inspiring way to create that kind of learning environment that they had envisioned, one that could expand access, spark creativity, and better support their students. And so it's actually probably exactly a year ago, the Makerspace launched in 2025, opening a 20,000 foot square STEAM makerspace in DC, designed to revolutionize hands-on learning for K-8 students, furthest from opportunities. It currently serves K-8 students, but also supports high school students during their summer program, where students can either work or learn during that time, and serving 6 campuses. The capital campaign goal started at $1 million, and you'll have to stay to the end to find out what was achieved. But the goal was to raise $1 million in addition to the other funds that had been secured to launch this space. So we are going to talk about the capital campaign journey and all the components. So we are going to start with the why, what the vision was and how that vision was meeting needs of students. The what, how are you defining and communicating the impact of a makerspace? Three, the who, how are you building the right team and connecting the right people? The how, which we have lots of great pictures to show of how engagement and relationships were built to support the makerspace. And then we'll talk about post-launch. The capital campaign ended, but really, what does that stewardship look like, and how are we sharing impact with those who were involved and supported the project? So we'll start with the why. As you shared, it was an old warehouse turned into a place of innovation and learning, opportunity, and career readiness. It was a STEAM-powered makerspace, not only serving Center City students, like we mentioned, but the vision was really to create shared programming, reaching teachers and school partners district-wide, and sharing those best practices of what it could look like in the city, both for traditional schools and public charter schools, and having those collaboration opportunities. The why was really centered in the real workforce gap. STEM jobs are projected to grow by 11% by 2031. And students furthest from opportunity need access to the tools, mentors, and experiences that prepare them for those jobs now. As we know, education is rapidly changing, and this space is designed to do that. And this is really the why. And there's a long list of whys, but these are some of the core um, reasons why the Makerspace was launched. The second part of the campaign is really defining the what. So we worked really closely with Frontwood and the Center City team to build a consistent messaging system so every stakeholder and donor and every channel told the same powerful story. So I'm going to turn it over to Nell, our comms expert, who can share a little bit about the different ways that we define the what.
Yeah, thanks, Val. So, our communications work starts way, way, way before the building ever opens, right? We started working with Russ and Patrice before the acquisition of the space so that we could prepare to announce this vision and then bring it to life. Because at the beginning, you saw that picture, the warehouse was not in good shape, and it was hard to imagine that there would be a cutting edge chemistry lab or whatever else that Patrice and Russ could envision. So we started with our brand. We needed to call it something, right? So we did go on a journey to name the makerspace, but at the end of the day, we picked the makerspace because it explains what it is. And that clarity is really essential in telling a story, especially for communities that might not be as familiar with the idea of maker education. And that if we had chosen something, we had like many, many creative options, but we thought that it sort of obscured what we were trying to do. We worked with a wonderful designing and branding firm on that naming process. And then ultimately, once we selected the name to create this dynamic logo that you see here with the different colors to try to show both like the components of what making is, right? Piecing together all those different components and materials with your hands or with a machine to create a new outcome. And then sort of to evoke the creativity that we hope to spark in students and anyone who walks through the front door. So once we had that visual identity and that brand set, then we had to bring it to life, right? So we created a one pager that really summarized the vision that you've heard about, and really make it clear of how people could participate in that vision. So it wasn't just Center City's vision, but everyone's vision for a brighter future for our students. We worked with Val and her team to create a case for support, which, though a separate document, as she said, tells the same story and repeats what is needed and why and how that gift and support would have an impact on the educational programs and the opening of the building itself. Um, and then this work isn't one and done, it's continual, right? So we developed a series of events that I think we'll talk about in more detail later. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have, but we also developed a monthly newsletter so that we could introduce the concept of the makerspace and then regularly engage donors, city leaders, and other audience members about what the makerspace is, what the vision is, and then our progress over the course of the long journey from real estate acquisition until program launch. So excited to share more as we go along, but really thinking about those components, how they could be clear and consistent and brand aligned was an essential component of our success here and our continued work together. Val, back to you.
Thank you, Nell. I think also what was really critical is defining a makerspace. There was a lot of supporters that did not know what a makerspace is. This happens a lot in education. We're doing all these incredible things, and people are like, "What is that term? What does that mean?" And so, really being able to clearly define what a makerspace is, what the impact was. We had one of our partners and supporters who was like, doing his own research and finding research that he would share back with us on like what a makerspace, what did they see the impact? So really bringing people in. I also with defining the what has was really critical and getting people on board. Sometimes in that initial phase, people are like, "Oh, well, we have all these other projects that we could fund or other things we could do." But being able to really clearly lay out the impact and the vision was able to help people bring it on, and then having these materials ready. And sometimes we have schools that just have the one pager that they're sharing consistently with parents, families, supporters. Because it was a capital campaign, the approach was more comprehensive. We'd have the board member who would say, "Oh, I need a one pager. I'm going to go have coffee with someone." And then they're like, "Oh, they're interested. They want to learn more." We give them the case for support. Um, and then we use the concept note. It's like the concept note is something we use with all of our partners. It has brought in millions and millions of dollars because it's a very clear tool to lay out what do foundations, corporate, and individuals need to hear to get involved, and how can they stay connected and feel proud of the project they're supporting. We have included all of these examples. We'll send out the presentation so you have examples of what this looks like, both the actual final product and the tools that we use to create it, because we don't need to overcomplicate it, right? Like, how do we make these strategies very simple and applicable, whether it's a small project that you're doing in your school or a large project or even an even bigger project, the tools are the same and can have that impact.
Wait, so Val, let me just one more thing.
Yep.
We did a landing page version of the one pager. So if you guys look up or have already looked up the Makerspace online, you'll see the current version of that of like present tense, what happens at the Makerspace. But we did have these donor more aspirational focus messaging online. So then it was easy for folks to share and for us to point people back to as well.
The next concept in the capital campaign is really critical. You've identified the why, the what, and now it's the who. And really, capital campaigns succeed when all groups really feel connected to the effort. And I was going to mention, you'll probably hear throughout the presentation today, is bringing people in early. So even when you have the concept note or the one pager, asking for feedback and, hey, what do you, this is what we're trying to do. And I think that's what the Center City team and Frontwood, we all did together, is really have people reviewing stuff early, so they feel like they're invested early in having that feedback. And we really started with the internal team. Russ built a really incredible team of architects, general managers, a finance team, obviously Patrice, the magician, the makerspace director, and the communications fundraising team to really work seamlessly together. Um, he also created really, we engaged the board really early, and meaningfully. We had them review our prospect list of who we wanted to engage, and developed a dedicated development committee to lead the Ask Along leadership. This committee was engaged regularly, thinking of people who could come and visit the makerspace. Like we said earlier, really engaged them early on, and built up that excitement for the makerspace, and developed a development committee. They, I think, had had one in previous years, but it wasn't as active. So this was a new committee, very engaged, to bring this project to life. The team also worked with teachers, families, and the community to build that excitement, sending out updates, sneak peeks of what was going to happen. Um, I think Patrice had so much interest from teachers wanting to get involved, and really engaging the community, whether it's like those local advocates, people, neighbors next door, education policymakers, and elected leaders. A lot of schools will say, I don't have a list, or I'm building our list. You really start name by name of who is connected, who would be interested in this work, and you start building it over time. When Nell and her team first sent the newsletter, it probably had a very small list, right? But then built it over time of people who are brought into the project and getting those valuable updates. Um, we also engaged past donors. So when we first began working with Russ, he said, we don't have currently a strong donor base. They had, had a strong donor base when they launched the schools many, many years ago, but had a very small donor base. So we did reconnect with those who were active or those who needed to be re-engaged, and really use that what to clearly give the next chapter, that vision to fund, and the impact that it would have. We were really excited to have a former donor, create a matching challenge grant. There are a lot of donors we've noticed that are very interested in challenge grants. They want their impact to be, you know, doubled or tripled. And this specific donor said, I will contribute 250,000 if you raise 750,000, because they wanted to hit the $1 million goal. And so that definitely, opened new doors and helped us. We use that in our communications to say we have a donor who will help us hit that $1 million goal, and have, contributed, which was really exciting. And then what we did is really build a strong prospective donor list. We looked at who are the foundations supporting STEM or after school opportunities or career readiness. Who are those donors? We used, tools like Candid and, um, tools like Instrumental to look at and really identify those foundations. We looked at 990s, organizations who are doing similar work, another makerspace, local makerspace, to see who is supporting them. We also identified corporate. Obviously, this is a high interest for corporate. So seeing who's mission aligned, who had those open opportunities, and looking at individuals who are sporting charter school work in DC, to really have a comprehensive list. And then the most critical step is connecting the dots, showing that list to your senior leadership team, your board members, people involved in the project, to say, hey, who do you know? I think we had 30 really strong prospects out of the list, and out of the top ranked prospects, I think those 15, somebody knew some, I think 13 out of 15, somebody on the team knew somebody. And everybody like, I don't know who to go to, but then they see the name, they see the connection. I think the CFO had worked with one of the foundations at his previous organization, so he was able to make the introduction. And then we were able to move forward with that engagement process. So, really having people review the prospects you're going with, because you never know who's going to know who, and especially it's a small world. The charter school space is small, DC is a small world, local people know people. So, making sure you're showing that list as you identify the who. As you look at the who, you are also seeing that we're engaging everyone, right? They're all being engaged in different ways, really meaningful ways, and making sure that people feel really connected to the space and building that excitement um, as you're doing that. I'm going to turn it over to Patrice to talk about the how. What did it really look like to cultivate and grow the sport and create those really meaningful engagement opportunities? And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's probably a few more on to be included, but
Yeah, absolutely. But one of the biggest lessons that we learned was that fundraising and relationship building really happen through experiences and connections. So the first strategy was personalized outreach through one-on-one meetings. Those conversations then allowed us to connect the makerspace vision directly to each donor or partner's interests. So some people connected with workforce development, others with innovation, equity, or education access. And so those individual conversations really mattered. And then the second major strategy was creating opportunities for people to see the space, like physically come in and experience the space for tours. We even had tours when the makerspace was still a construction site, right? And it was really cool and fun for people to put on a hard hat and work vests and all the PPE and all the things that kept us in safety compliance. So those tours became really powerful for us. And then once donors and community leaders or partners were able to walk through the building and see how we wanted to engage students in the environment, then the vision really became real. So we hosted, like I said, those frequent tours during construction. We had ribbon cuttings. We had community events that really helped people feel invested in the project long before we even opened for the start of the school year. Another piece was recognition and visibility. So the donor wall and lab naming opportunities gave our supporters a lasting connection to the makerspace. It wasn't just about recognition, but it was also about stewardship and helping people feel like they were a part of building something meaningful and lasting for our students. We also spent a lot of time on advocacy and public visibility. So we wanted local leaders, education officials, and just other community stakeholders to come into the space early and often. And so we've had DC Council representatives, OSCE, and other partners who could help amplify this work. Public visibility really helped reinforce that it wasn't just a school project, but it was more of a community investment for the future opportunities for our students.
now anything you want to add? I know you guys did a lot of work as well.
Yeah, so I think all along, Patrice is so right about those relationships and that visibility and making something like that started out very conceptual into something very tangible. That at each of these inflection points, we also considered how we would communicate that using our existing channels like email and social media, but then also when would we call reporters or look for other public visibility moments, which are happy to talk more about, like, the DC media market might be unique to where you live, but we had reporters that came to our community events and were able to get local news coverage. And that just is a way to reinforce our message with, some of these higher value um, partners. So whether that's like business leaders, foundations, or elected officials, and that help brought more visibility to the project over time.
And as you look at this list, like I think really thinking about how are you creating those really tangible moments. I even went for a tour and I had somebody in the makerspace was having me sew. And I'm like, that moment has stayed with me because I'm like, I'm able to walk into this incredible space and be able to engage. And so whether you're doing a major project like this or if it's something small, how are you getting people in? Are you launching a library? How do you get people connected to those experiences, those hands-on moments that really, really solidify that what that's going to look like, whether you're growing your school, how do you bring people into the space? And we always say, make it simple. We always, our phrase is always keep it simple. What are those things that you're already naturally doing where you can invite people and do that work? Welcome, Russ, for joining.
I was just going to
Um,
add to that, Val, where that I think one of the best parts about school-based programs is like everyone has a connection to school. And I think for us, like consistently, when anyone it like myself included, when you walk into the maker space, you're like, man, I wish I could have done this. And so one of the features of the maker space is a modern recording studio. So, like on the media tour, we always take people to the recording studio to say, hey, like I know that you are, a member of the local press. If for any reason you ever wanted to record here, you're welcome to do that. And they're always like, this place is so much nicer than my office. So, just another way to really build that like human connection with the different audiences that we bring into the spaces.
yep. Welcome, Russ. Is there anything you want to talk about around the how we did our one-on-one meetings? I know you had a lot of coffee conversations, those tours, the grand opening, the community event, naming opportunities. I know you've done a lot of advocacy work to expand makerspace impact. Is there anything else you'd want to share as you joined the call?
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I would just add that it's very easy to do this sort of work. All of the things that Valerie mentioned, when you really believe in something like down to your core, and we believed in and felt and just sort of knew from other jurisdictions, seeing it work in other areas, that something like this was needed and would work. And just had there are a lot of worthy causes, but like this was a this was like a kind of a double win where we're educating kids and also putting them on a career path. And it's the kind of thing that, depending on the work you do, like it resonates with certain folks from certain sectors. So anyone who does sort of work this tangible can be made find value in something like that. And I think it's the same with any project where if you have a project and people like are aligned in terms of the values and beliefs, that then it's easy for folks to get behind. And like one of the easiest, and I'm sure Val talked about this, but a friend of a friend connected us to a retired executive from Snap-on, and he was like, "Oh, a space where kids build stuff. We love that. Let me connect you to my friends, my former workers at Snap-on, and they've been one of our biggest supporters in terms of all the different equipment, materials, and money that they've showered upon the makerspace, because they're like, we make tools to make things. We really believe in spaces like this. So there's that alignment in terms of values and vision in terms of what's good for kids going forward. So I think that was made it easy when you found people who came from spaces or businesses or like lives where they made stuff, right?
Yeah, love that. I think the quote you guys have up in the makerspace is if you can think it, you can make it, right? And so like that has resonated with a lot of people who walk into that space. Because it opens up like, yes, you can think it just like this project. You thought about it and now you're making it, and now students are having the opportunity as well. We do have some of the pictures from the how. I know, Patrice, just some of the ways that people engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide really here captures what the engagement looked like throughout the journey. I mentioned the hard hat tours. Um, you see me there with the executives, both retired and current executives from Snap-on. Russ kind of stole my thunder there about that story. But you can see some students kind of in the background interacting with the space, community members just touring the facility during construction, and partners just experiencing the vision firsthand. And so what made these moments really powerful was that people weren't just hearing about the makerspace, right? They were seeing it, and they were seeing our students actively learning, building, exploring, collaborating. And so those opportunities helped us create some emotional connection and momentum. And they help donors and partners understand the long-term impact in a very tangible way. So this I say all the time, this is the best job ever. It's not even work. It's really something that Russ said. If it's work that you believe in wholeheartedly, it's a part of just who you are as a human being, then it doesn't feel like work anymore, right? And that's how it is definitely here for me.
Yeah. I love these pictures from the community opening and all the
Hmm.
families engaged.
Yeah.
I also shared something that a donor, one of the large donors in DC shared. She attended the community opening. And I think oftentimes we hear school leaders who are very nervous about making the ask and like you're trying to convince people. And at the end of the day, you are giving people a gift. And this woman posted it on her LinkedIn about like how much it was a gift to attend the maker space, just like pure joy and happiness. Families, doing miniature golf out of cardboard or like doing these circuit board experiments. She walked away from that moment changed and having that pure joy of supporting a project that really is transforming. And, people who walk in so thinking about ways that as you invite people in, as you create those engagement opportunities, how people are like you are giving them a gift to be involved with the work that you're doing, and reframing how you're thinking about it's not just those transactional ask and those donations that coming in, but really those true, deep, meaningful partnerships. Um, Last, I think Russ and Patrice both hit on this is like the donor journey and partnership highlight. We had one really introduction led to many connections and transformational partnerships. So I'll turn it to Patrice to share that.
Yes, so this really is one of my favorite examples. And it really just, in a nutshell, tells the whole story of the makerspace. And it really shows how relationships can grow organically into transformational partnerships. So it started with a single board member conversation. So our former chairman of the board has a neighbor. Um, and he talked to him about the vision for the makerspace. And then that neighbor introduced Center City to Snap-on, which is just naturally aligned to what it is we want to do here at the makerspace as far as workforce development is concerned. And so then from there, Snap-on supported equipment needs, but not just equipment needs. They even sent individuals here to come see the space and just have conversations with me about what it was that we were trying to do so that they could give advice on, okay, we think you need this or we think you need that. And so then they connected us with NC3, which is the National Coalition of Certification Centers. And that partnership has been just in, extremely impactful in that it created pathways for our educators to become certified in these credentialing opportunities, which are then transferable to our students. So the takeaway here really is that one authentic relationship can then have a ripple effect, right? And you never fully really know where one warm introduction could lead to a stronger relationship, and that has, the capacity to just be really at the center of what it is we're trying to do.
Yeah. I love that story. And the reality is, like, when you're doing this work, you're going to have people who say yes, and it's going to turn into these transformational opportunities. You may not have people engaged, they may just be aware of it and learn more, but you won't know if you don't try, right? Like, you have to share, and those people who are really truly aligned to your work are going to join, they're going to get involved, and build those multi-year relationships and partnerships. And so the capital campaign ended, and Center City actually doubled their goal, raising 2 million for the maker's space. And while the campaign is closed, the building has launched. The real work of stewardship and sustaining those relationships is just beginning. So really thinking about sharing those impact reports, hosting those stewardship events. So the team is creating, they already have a student opportunity with Play Lab. It's a hackathon, and a donor wall, pairing it up with the donor wall unveiling. So instead of doing separate events, which sometimes I think we separate donors from those events that are already happening, it's combined into one so supporters can walk in and see the space and see students in action doing this really cool hackathon, and then having that donor wall unveiling. And then that wall also anchors donor recognition, but also, as Nell mentioned earlier, donors are continuously updated. So they have those monthly emails. And it's really incredible if you look at like where the email started and what the project looked like to now, you now have a historical record of the project and the space. Your list is being built, more people are coming on, and it's that sustainable growth that we talk about in fundraising. And then our, team is working really closely to create that multi-year vision of what is next. You have people who are engaged, they're excited, but how can they continue to help you scale that impact, and really grow that support over time? So really thinking about how are you doing your post-launch once people have given? This is probably one of the most important times, right? Keeping them updated, sharing that impact, sharing. Sometimes it's like we always, like I said earlier, keep it simple. It could be something as simple as like, hey, the student did this great project today. It's really those simple storytelling to keep people updated and engaged with the project. I don't know, anybody on the team, I know we're coming at time. Anything we missed in the post-launch? Great. And then these turn it to Patrice. These were the numbers in year one, and a lot happened, and it's been really incredible to watch the project.
A lot really has happened. Sometimes I'm sitting reflecting and saying, wow, we haven't even fully completed year one yet. So we haven't even gotten to the end of the school year yet. But we are starting to really see the impact of all the work, right, in real numbers. So in year one alone, we reached over 1,250 students across all six of our campuses. Students participated in 162 sessions, completed more than 500 projects, and created over 200 prototypes. We've built relationships with 9 strategic partners. We received recognition at the DC STEM Fair. We've gotten local media coverage. But honestly, though, beyond the numbers, what's been really exciting has been to just see the students gain confidence, more just being more curious and taking some ownership over their learning, being more collaborative and cooperative with their peers, and with their teachers as well. Students are solving problems, they're experimenting, they're seeing themselves as creators and innovators. And so that's really what the ultimate goal is. Sometimes you hear students saying things like, oh, this was the best day ever, or I never want to leave here. I wish I could stay here. Then you know that you're doing the real work, right? Because who says that, right? You don't hear kids saying that they don't want to leave school. And so this year has been truly impactful, not just for us as adults and the staff who work here at the Makerspace, but for our students and their teachers as well.
Incredible impact. I know we're coming at time. Just want to share a few takeaways. As you probably heard throughout the session today is, and what Russ shared and the group shared is like really grounding it on your why and really having, having those clear communications of your why and the impact you're going to have, really bringing people in. I also think what this project really highlighted is how we're bringing fundraising, communications, and programming together. It wasn't, sometimes we're like, oh, that's so hard. That's time. How do we coordinate? A monthly meeting to bring everybody together to do the work and really being strategic and effective and having these strategies in place. Having, oftentimes like in schools, those things will work in a silo. And if you can really make sure to bring that dedicated time together to work closely, it really is what transforms the vision, and it creates, engagement, trust, and support. And I think what we highlighted as well is like the participation, making it meaningful for everyone, whether it's a board member, how are they going to gauge staff, families, donors, and community partners, really having that clear role or an authentic way to get involved or to contribute to the mission. As a former educator, I always say, how do we differentiate? I do it as well with donors as well as like how and members of the community, how are we differentiating so they can get involved, that we can meet them where they're at. And as you see, the partnerships and the community has come together really well to create a space that is truly transforming education. And you may say, wait, we're not doing something as big as a standalone makerspace, but these are the strategies that we do with all across the country. That just making sure you're keeping those different phases, can be for a small project, right? Like you're buying technology or library work or teacher support. These key strategy and components can apply to anything you're working on. And it really just builds that excitement and those opportunities. So, I guess from the panelists, any last things or any other takeaways before we turn it over to questions?
I think you laid it all out, but I really do want to just keep, from my perspective anyway, in the role that I'm in, just keep going back and doubling down on the impact of relationship building, and across all kind of sectors, right? So relationships at the school level, community level, donor level, how impactful that really has been for this whole process.
Yep. Love it. So we will turn it over for any questions. I know we only have a few more minutes left. It looks like there's a question around board engagement. I know Russ, oftentimes we work with boards. Somebody's asking about what did that look like to get the board involved, and engage the board.
Yeah, if that's a question to me, I think it's just a function of working with the individual board members, like to sort of to what is it, develop their own fundraising prowess and skill, right? And some of that is folks like Funded help you figure that out and develop it. And some of it is understanding which of your board members maybe bring a little bit of prior. Sometimes people have fundraising experience, which you can leverage and they can share with other board members, things like that. And it's also like working just to get people like I when I first started raising money for the makerspace, I would laugh with people in terms of, look, I'm not a fundraiser. I just think you should support this project. And, like you were able to be folksy about it. And then that only gets you so far, though. And then you start using the tools and the things that other folks have. And what do you call it? You start being a little more organized and systematic about it. But and the cultivating and the follow-up and things it's good to have people who are familiar with this work to help guide and to help drive that a little bit. So Each board member is going to be different in terms of how they want to engage and who they want to engage with, but like figuring out their level of like willingness and the level of engagement and how excited they are about a project will help you. Um, there's a question about no. 2 million was part of the cost of purchase and renovating. But we wanted to raise some funds to offset the project just to kind of show that we had, because we believed we had a project that would be supported by the community in terms of fundraising. And we're still seeing that. I mean, we've recently won a grant for ongoing programming from the folks at Honda. So, I mean, and that's the other thing. Like, I never in a million years would I be like, oh, yeah, Honda's going to give us money, you know? So sometimes you have to throw putty at the wall and see what sticks, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, they need to have interest, right? Like, Honda obviously had interest in STEM and maker type stuff, but like, a national foundation, like, it's worth taking a shot because sometimes they do land, but you have to take, what is it, informed shots.
Yep. And that's a good, I think, bring it. Honda's interesting because we weren't awarded in the first year because the project was too early. But that no is okay because, right, it let set the stage for the second ask. And when they could see the project had launched, that they were able to support. So the 2 million was offsetting the cost of the total project. But those relationships for the capital projects are now going into helping programmatic costs and building that support and really focusing on what are some multi-year commitments that we can get from the relationships we built through the capital campaign. So I do think we are over a time, but we have, thank you so much for the great chat. Um, we do have linked to the resources. We'll send out this presentation so you can have access to the tools and resources so you can apply it for your organization. We are also in July launching a fundamentals program that really will talk through how to use some of the tools, how can you apply it to your programs and projects in schools, and we'll share that as well. And then I have included our contact information. If you are in DC, I highly recommend visiting the Makerspace. It's just, you walk away truly excited and engaged for the future of learning and seeing that in practice. So, special thank you to our panelists and all those who attended. And I have our contact information if you would like to reach out, and we will share this presentation afterwards. So, thank you all for joining us today and have a wonderful week.